What is Ayurveda? Let's start with the name Ayurveda. What does it mean? Ayur means life and Veda means science. So Ayurveda is this science of life that teaches us how to live intelligently, how to live in harmony with nature. It has so much more to offer in this practical science. Ayurveda is a whole system of tools, techniques, strategies of coming into balance to balance our physical body and to also balance our mind. So, in this ancient science, which dates back 5,000 years ago, it's more than a medical system. So, I like to define Ayurveda as also a philosophy, a way of life, a science of spirituality, and it really combines all of these things: medicine, science, philosophy, spirituality into one. There is so much breadth to this beautiful science. I want to share with you some of the key principles in Ayurveda. So, one of the first ones is this idea of living in harmony with ourselves. How do we create that harmony within us, but also living in harmony with nature? So, if we look back to our ancestors years ago, they were living without electricity, without all these modern conveniences that we have nowadays. And they learned to live in harmony and wake up when the sun rose, to go to bed shortly after the sunset. It is very different from our modern day life where we can stay awake all night long because we have electricity, we have lighting, we have video games, we have TV, all these different forms of entertainment. And so, as this technology has developed, they're wonderful tools for us to develop and advance, but they're also tools that can impair our health. And so Ayurveda talks about how do we start to live in harmony. And one of the things I talk to patients about, which, Ayurvedic doctors or practitioners were not talking about a few generations ago, is how do we live in harmony with technology as well? What is the right balance between technology and being indoors versus being in nature and connecting with nature? So, offering a nature prescription to our patients is something that is becoming researched and is something that some physicians are starting to do in Canada and Europe, in the US as well. But this is something Ayurveda has always talked about. We have a concept of moon bathing, sunbathing, being in nature to help balance certain conditions and remedies. And so this is something that is intrinsic to Ayurvedic way of thinking, is how do we connect with nature. Living here in Florida, I often will prescribe to patients who maybe are having severe depression, can you go to the beach every weekend and do a 20-minute walk, a 30-minute walk? Can we start to create this as a daily ritual or a daily rhythm? And so this is something that Ayurveda talks about a lot as well. So in addition to living in harmony with nature, Ayurveda says that anytime we are disconnected from nature, we're always going to invite imbalance into our system. So we look at ourselves as fundamentally connected to nature and the universe around us, and the human body is the microcosm versus the universe at large is the macrocosm. And so we start to reflect imbalances in one will create an imbalance in the other. So there's a very reciprocal relationship between us and our environment and nature. Planetary health is becoming a popular topic these days. We're just really at kind of the beginning of this frontier of planetary health. But this understanding echoes the wisdom of Ayurveda as well, that any disturbance in our environment is going to create a disturbance within us. And so when we understand this reciprocal relationship, we can take steps to bring us towards this feeling of balance. Another key principle in Ayurveda is the concept of innate intelligence. So this is kind of connected to the first principle of living in harmony with nature, but Ayurveda says that anytime we disconnect from the innate intelligence within us, we're going to invite disease. And so we disconnect from that innate intelligence every time we give in to our food cravings, for example, when we reach for that second big piece of chocolate cake. There's a part of us that knows that's not healthy, I don't need it, I'm not that hungry, but that craving kind of overrides that intelligence, and it gets us to do things that we know are not in our best interest. So we do this all the time when we stay up too late and we don't go to bed on time, if we sleep in the morning and we don't wake up when our body needs to wake up, every time we skip a meal, every time we're thirsty and we don't drink a glass of water, every time we're tired and we don't take time to rest, every time we're sleepy and we decide to keep working and ignore our sleep. These are all the ways on a daily basis that we ignore that innate intelligence. And so Ayurveda talks at its heart about how do we start to honor that innate intelligence within us, respect our body and its needs, and what can we do to actively cultivate that intelligence. We can do this through proper diet, proper lifestyle, proper stress management techniques such as meditation, proper exercise such as stretching and yoga, for example. So there's many things that we can do to cultivate this innate intelligence. And so much of Ayurveda is patient education, so that we can educate our patients that there's so many tools at their disposal, and this empowers our patients to take charge of their own health, to get motivated, to be able to take small steps and to see big changes and big results. Another key principle of Ayurveda is that medicine cannot be generalized. There's no one-fits-all approach, that we always have to customize to the needs of the individual. So for example, if I have 5 patients with anxiety, it doesn't mean I have the same prescription for all 5 of those individuals. I'm going to custom tailor my recommendations based on each of those 5 people might have a different body type, they might have a different age, they might live in a different environment and climate, they might be afflicted with other conditions that are exacerbating that anxiety. So there's so many variables we know as clinicians that we have to take into account when we're addressing our patient. And so Ayurveda believes strongly that we have to customize everything in Ayurveda to meet the needs of the individual. And so much of our approach does involve diet and lifestyle, exercise modifications, yoga therapy, breathing and meditation techniques, herbal remedies and prescriptions, specific Ayurvedic detox techniques. And so all of that is what we're factoring into account when we're trying to get results with our patient. And we'll get a sense of, in this Ayurveda module series, some beginning steps that you can start to take to help diagnose your patients from an Ayurvedic perspective, and suggestions and ideas, strategies that you might start to give your patients as well from an Ayurvedic lens. Another key principle of Ayurveda is the concept of longevity. So Ayurveda believes that we really want to maximize our time here on planet Earth, that every human birth is a gift and we don't take this for granted. And it's not just about lengthening our years, living to be 100, for example, but then still being disabled or being on a ventilator. It's really about maximizing the length of years, but also the quality of life as well. And that has a huge effect on the balance that we're trying to create, body, mind, and spirit as well. So the key to longevity, Ayurveda believes, is really prevention. So there's so much Ayurvedic literature has to say about disease management and principles, and we'll talk about that, a little intro to that. But really at its core, Ayurveda believes that prevention is the wisest strategy. It's much easier to prevent illness than to start to treat signs and symptoms when they arise or when they get exacerbated and turn into different disease conditions. We have a lot more work to do to try to get into balance. So Ayurveda talks about prevention from the concept of the 3 doshas or body types. We'll get into that in the next video series. But really, if we can take tools to prevent, to understand what are our weaknesses, what are the patterns that we might start to have with going in out of balance, then we can start to take preventive measures to be able to treat this. I know in Western medicine now there is a whole branch of anti-aging medicine. This goes against the wisdom of Ayurveda, because once again we're talking about becoming in harmony with nature, and part of that means we can't defy nature. We can't stop the aging process, but we can learn how to age well, and we can learn how to age with wisdom and to really be able to cultivate that. So that's Ayurveda's strategy, is not anti-aging, but aging well. And this is really the heart of our longevity medicine. So I've shared with you a couple different ideas here to introduce Ayurveda, this beautiful science of life. Ultimately, it's about how we learn to live intelligently, how we learn to live in harmony with nature, prevent disease, and maximize our longevity. So this is something that appeals to everyone. That's a beautiful list of benefits that come from Ayurveda. I can't imagine any patient, if they were educated about this, would say no to learning more about Ayurveda and starting to go deeper into it. So I'm excited to share with you more about Ayurveda and go deeper into the science in the rest of our videos.